and welcome to another of our Scottish opera podcasts. And today I'm joined by Susannah Wapshott, who is the Associate Chorus Master for Scottish Opera. Hello, Susannah.
Hi.
And the first question we've been asking everyone during these podcasts is, can you just tell us a little bit about your role?
So my role encompasses many jobs, but basically for half of the year I act as chorus master. For the rest of my year it's my colleague Jonathan Swinard, and I basically support him in that role, but when he's not here, so for the summer production, the spring and summer production, I teach the chorus their roles, I rehearse them, and then I'm responsible for them in production and then on tour, and that encompasses any offstage duties, conducting or warming them up, anything like that. When I'm not in that role, I act as a repetiteur, which is a pianist who is basically the orchestra when we don't have the orchestra. So it normally takes about 6 weeks to stage an opera, and obviously it would be very expensive to pay an orchestra to sit there for that whole time. So we have a pianist who is trained in playing for conductors and also trained in how to play like an orchestra.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. You never stop learning how to do it. It's really fascinating.
Because I'm so glad we're talking to you, because the term repetiteur has come up pretty much in every interview we've done out of the 10 so far. And I think it's one that listeners, if they don't know opera well, might be going, but what exactly is it? And so you're now here to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And how possibly can you be the person in the piano that replicates an orchestra? How do you even begin that?
Well, it begins with a detailed knowledge of how an orchestra works, how they play for a conductor. So, for example, there are many different types of instruments in an orchestra. Obviously, there are stringed instruments, and their sound, because they use a bow on the string, there's a slight delay to the sound, whereas an oboist has an attack to the sound, a brass player has a slightly different attack, then you've got a timpanist who's sort of rumbly, and all singers and repetiteurs, we work from a vocal score, which someone in the past has condensed the full score. The full score is what the conductor works from, and someone has condensed it into a playable version on the piano. Right. And in fact, originally these vocal scores were before people could buy a CD or listen to Spotify, so they could play the opera at home.
Okay.
That's how they first came to be. So often they're quite a basic representation of the score. So one of a repetiteur's jobs is to know the full score so well that they can embellish. So we don't actually play really what's written down. We use it as a form of shorthand. It reminds us what's there, what key we're in, also what the singers are singing. It's got all the words and the vocal line. But we, repetiteurs, have to add to that. Because often they might miss out the piccolo part. They might miss out a really crucial brass chord. So when I'm playing for production, I'll have the vocal score on the piano, but I'll have the full score next to me all the time. Okay. So I'm really playing from both.
Wow, that sounds incredibly complicated. It's like juggling and throwing an extra ball in there to do it. So how do you train for this role? Because this seems like it takes a lot of training to get to that understanding of an orchestra.
It does, yeah. I mean, we start as good pianists. We've done our piano training. We've played our Brahms sonatas and whatever else, our Chopin etudes, and then you start learning about an orchestra. And I suppose the first thing is that the way I came to it was I began playing a lot of chamber music. Mm-hmm. I always preferred working with other musicians. Being a pianist can be quite lonely, because it's just you. So if you do a solo piano recital, it's just you on stage, and then it's just you afterwards. And I didn't really enjoy that so much. I did quite a lot of it. I didn't really enjoy it. That then I started playing with cellists and violinists and clarinetists. This is where I studied in Manchester at the Royal Northern. Right. And that was great. And the other aspect of it that you have to have is a really good level of sight reading. and that is where someone puts a piece of music in front of you and you just play it.
Yeah.
And you can just read it very quickly. I got good at sight reading because I never liked to practice the piano when I was younger, seriously.
Yeah, no,
and I would play anything and everything that was there, apart from the pieces I was meant to play. But actually, that is really what has set me in good stead for this career, because I can read very quickly. And that also really helps as a conductor, because as a conductor, you're reading 30 staves all at once. So all of these little elements, and everyone has their own different path. There isn't one route. However, you can study it as a postgraduate. So that's when I moved to Glasgow.
Right.
I discovered opera, basically, and I thought, this is great. I really want to study how to do this better. So my option was, at that point, it was London or Glasgow, and I came up here for an audition and fell in love with the city, and I'm still here.
And so you did the training, because I was wondering whether the training happened with the company, but the training actually happened in an institution.
Yeah, I did a year at the RCS.
Yeah.
And then I did a second year as what was then the Musicians Benevolent Fund's Junior Fellow. That's now turned into the Emerging Artist repetiteur.
Yeah.
But I was shared between the companies. So in fact, that year I worked on 7 full productions. I think I did 4 at the RCS. It was the RSIMD then. And 3 or 4 at Scottish Opera. So that was my sort of apprentice year. And then I got a job after that.
Yeah. So you've been with the company for a while?
11 years.
Wow, you must have seen quite a few changes over that time. Or have you? Has it been...
some changes.
Yeah.
But the essence of the company is still there.
So let's go right back to the beginning. What was your kind of initial love of music? What made you start the piano in the first place?
My ballet teacher told my parents that I had very good rhythm, and that I should learn an instrument, and that was why. Okay. We had a piano at home. My dad played the piano a bit, but my parents aren't musical, they're not musicians. So I started having piano lessons. I think I was 6 or 7 maybe, and I don't really remember, but within a couple of months I did grade 1. Now, having taught beginners myself, actually, grade 1's really hard. But I don't really remember learning. I just remember just being able to do it and loving doing it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't necessarily practice what I was meant to, but I played an awful lot.
Yeah. I think it sounds, I'm not musical myself, but it does seem to me that, particularly if you start young, it's almost like learning a language young, or even doing a sport quite young. You can have a natural affinity to it that some people go through it really quickly. And you said you were very good at reading. Now I know musicians who have been musicians for a long time who still aren't particularly good at reading. So it's something that obviously...
I suppose it just clicked, I can't put my finger on it. So I learnt piano first, and then I started flute at the age of 8, and then I started violin. And my brother played the trumpet, so I played a bit of the trumpet. But I always came back to the piano. Piano is really where I always felt most comfortable.
And from quite an early age, did you think this is going to be a career?
Not at all. There was no one in my school life who said it was remotely possible to be a musician. It just wasn't even part of the equation. Not at all.
Yeah. So when did that change?
Well, when I was choosing what to do at university, I very nearly did classics because I enjoyed Latin. Actually, I wish I'd done modern languages. That would have been useful for my job.
Of course, yeah.
I had a very, very good piano teacher. I started really at the Royal Northern when I was 15, I think, with a proper piano teacher, I can say, who teaches there. And he really advised me. And he said, go and do a music degree, an academic music degree.
Yes.
Because that's what you enjoy most. So I did. So I went to Manchester University.
And at that time, was it just concentrating on the one instrument, or were you looking at much around there?
No, at university it was mostly academic, so it was mostly essays, but then with my instrument, which was piano. So I did, and you didn't have to do performance. You could do composition or orchestration or other things, but I chose performance as one of my main things, and that was piano.
I'm interested, you say that being a solo musician or a solo pianist is a lonely kind of pursuit. Was that when you decided I want to be involved with a company rather than just even you know, a quartet or whatever?
No, still at this point, I didn't know that even the job of repetiteur existed. It's a strange thing. Even when I was a postgraduate, it's almost like a hidden career.
Yeah.
Really, piano students don't get, or maybe they do now, but we were not given an option or told that it was an option. An accompanist, yes, because accompanists are very, very useful. Sorry. But no, I didn't know about opera, and I didn't think I liked it. And I really only came to it when I was 23, and I started playing. They started asking me to play for singing classes at the Royal Northern.
And this was still when you were down in Manchester.
Yeah.
And did you kind of fall in love when you started looking into opera? Was that something that this is fantastic?
Because I'd always liked drama. I'd always liked theatre and languages as well. And suddenly it was like a light bulb going off in my head. This discipline combines all of that.
Yes.
Theatre, music, languages, and I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before, but as I said, no one had mentioned it.
Well, maybe, yeah, absolutely. Maybe it just wasn't something that kind of came up. So that's when you started to look around and think, well, where can I can learn more about opera? And what did the actual postgraduate in opera, what did that entail?
Learning lots of scenes from operas, lots of operas. We would do classes actually in conducting, even from that early stage, because of course to be able to play for a conductor you need a certain amount of knowledge of what they do, and that's really what has led me into conducting. And a lot of repetiteurs end up conducting as well.
That's interesting. So is that almost like the next step? You understand the orchestra, you have an understanding of the types of scores, well, where do you go next? You stand at the front.
Yeah, I mean, there are many repetiteurs who are fabulous and just stay, and that's all they want to do. They just want to be the orchestra at the piano and support the singers. A huge part of the job is coaching the singers and being that support for them in the room when they've got directors telling them what to do and do this and that, and you have to have an ear on that to make sure the singing stays healthy. So that's a very important job of a repetiteur as well. And outside of the production room, we would coach them on phrasing, on languages, on roles. Sometimes some singers come to a repetiteur just to learn a role. Right. Some singers aren't brilliant pianists and they need help learning a role. A lot of them don't. But all of this are jobs that you might be asked to do. So
when you were doing the opera as a postgraduate, it sounds like they kind of give you an overall, almost the greatest hits, or some of the greatest hits that you can then. So is there the theatre aspect, is that involved in the training?
Oh yes, yeah. Well, certainly up at the RCS we did actually collaborations with Scottish Opera. That was back then. But because they train technicians, they train stage management, they all come together to put on these productions. So yes, you very much do. Yes.
Okay. So the next question is, how did you come to be at Scottish Opera? You just came along and auditioned and.
Well, it was through the junior fellow.
Yeah. So how does that work? Because is it the same as it is now with?
Pretty much. I suppose I was still involved with the RCS, and the emerging artist position now is a junior repetiteur position. So they'd be asked to play for productions or work with another repetiteur on a production. And you just have to muck in auditions, you have to play for auditions, coachings, masterclasses, fundraising events. It's whatever they need a pianist for, and pianists are always needed.
Right from the start, yeah. So it does seem that you really, almost more than anyone else, have an overall idea of what the company does.
Yeah.
So what are the specific challenges that you have then? When you start, I'm trying to get my mind around a kind of day in the life, but it seems to me like there's probably not a typical day in the life. So what are the challenges then that you face?
The challenges are juggling learning schools There's a lot to learn, and you have to learn it as you really need to know it the best of anyone.
Yeah.
As a conductor or a repetiteur, you need to know every element of the score, every element of the vocal line. And on top of that, learning however many scores a year, you'll be thrown into auditions, which is just sight reading for a day. Or coaching, so-and-so needs a coaching. Oh, right, so it might be a score you don't know, but you have to apply the knowledge you know of a certain genre or a certain composer. Knowledge of vocal technique. I mean, we're not singers, and yet we are able to listen to a voice and suggest how they could improve it, or suggest easier ways of doing things.
Okay.
Because we always look for efficiency. So they can have longevity in their career.
Yeah. So and it sounds also like the role where you're constantly learning.
Always learning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is always a tough question to ask, but do you have highlights of your time with the company?
Yes, I think it's just happened. I conducted the Nixon in China Unwrap on Friday, and that's probably one of the highlights of my career. It's a fabulous opera.
It is, yeah.
John Adams, I love his music, and to conduct extracts with our amazing orchestra was just great, and I get to do it again on Friday in Edinburgh. So that's been really good. But other highlights of my career so far have been taking operas around the Highlands and Islands. I took Macbeth, so this is musical directing from the piano, so where I am the conductor and the orchestra, and it's a sort of condensed production where we don't have a chorus, but yet it retains the essence of the opera, and it's full productions. These were the Scottish Opera go-rounds, of course. So I did Macbeth, La Traviata, Rosalinda, which was with a cello and a violinist,
right.
And myself playing harpsichord, and Carmen.
Wow.
And all of those were just wonderful, and we would do 25 dates all around Scotland in really remote places where they don't get opera.
Yeah.
And it's what the Opera Highlights Tour does now.
Yes.
And it's just fantastic taking opera to people who live really far away from cities.
And what's
and
the
beautiful
reaction?
Scotland.
Yes, absolutely.
They love it.
Yeah.
Every single performance I played in, and that was all different genres, from Handel to Verdi to Bizet. It's always such a positive reaction and gratefulness for bringing it. So yeah, may that continue.
Absolutely, yeah. So you mentioned there about conducting the unwrap of Nixon in China. So explain a little bit what the unwrap is. It's a term I'm not aware of.
So on many productions, we unwrap the production, and the unwrap is an hour-long presentation presented by Alan Dunn, who works in the education department here, and it's with the cover cast, so they're the understudies.
Right.
Who
okay.
they have to learn. They spend a couple of weeks learning the roles, and then we do a cover run. It's in case any of the principals go off sick, which happens quite a lot.
Yes.
Because singers are quite it's not that singers are fragile, but we ask a lot of them, and the repertoire asks a lot of them. So if a singer gets a cold, sometimes they just can't perform, or they might choose to take the stage rehearsals easy. They might put their cover on for that. But so we need to train these covers to be able to take over at any moment. So the unwrap uses them and the orchestra, and we show highlights of the piece and also interesting scene changes, interesting technical things that might happen in the production without trying to ruin the magic, because of course we like to keep an element of magic in theatre. But they're great, and £5 a ticket, and it's a really great show, and it's a taster of if you're not sure about committing to the full production.
Sure.
It's great to come along to an unwrap and you get an idea of what you might see in the show.
That's a lovely idea, especially seeing a little bit behind the curtain, but not too much.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you say about the strain on not the strain on voices, but just the physicality of what opera is. Because someone asked me recently about Nixon in China. It's got such good press. And they said, but they only did whatever it was 4 nights in Glasgow or something like that. And I imagine it's such a huge thing to put on anyway. There's so many people involved, but there's also that you've got to give people rest before they go and do it somewhere else.
Yeah, I think the little number of performances is actually down to the repertoire, though.
Right.
And in fact, it's been selling really well because it's a fabulous production and we've got really good press. But you compare a John Adams opera to something like Tosca, we know that we're definitely going to sell Tosca lots and lots and lots and lots. We're a bit more unsure about more modern opera.
Of course.
Because generally UK audiences are quite conservative.
Yeah.
But of course it's great to do either contemporary productions or more modern music, because that's how we keep the art form alive. But it'll be down to that. But yes, you're right, the singers, they would not be able to sing every night.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that. So they need at least one day off in between, probably two.
Yeah.
And depending on the repertoire, you know, really big singing Wagner, long 5-hour performances, you would need a lot more rest in between.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about the current season. It is very mixed. There's a fantastic mix of stuff. Do you have anything that's coming up that you're really looking forward to?
Well, we're about to start some Gilbert and Sullivan, which is always fun.
Yeah.
It's really, really fun stuff. And then we've got a double bill of Cavalleria Rusticana with Zingari. So I love the Italian rap as well. So we'll enjoy that. And that's I'm chorus mastering for those 4 operas. The GNS is The Gondoliers and Utopia Limited.
I don't know that second one.
Yeah, no, very few people know it. And then I'll be flying to Adelaide next week with our Breaking the Waves production, which we opened in Edinburgh, which was just absolutely stunning. A piece by Missy Mazzoli, a few years old. Fantastic. And we're taking it to the Adelaide Festival.
So it seems that there's no possible way you could ever get bored in the role, because you're involved with absolutely everything and all the different styles and all the different aspects of it. Are you involved on the night itself, or are you able to...
Yeah, if I'm chorus master, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, the chorus will often sign in about an hour before the show, and we'll do a 10-minute warm-up, which would be... It's not vocal warm-ups, they do that themselves. It's just little bits from the piece that might be tricky, remember not to rush here, or notes from the previous night. And then often there's... And I mentioned this earlier, there'll be off-stage duties. So that's things like if there's first of all, if there's some off-stage singing, so that's if there's voices coming from the distance, you need someone conducting that. We have monitors all around. Yeah. We have 3 monitors out front, because if a singer is, of course they have to act. You don't want them just staring at the conductor.
Sure.
So we'll have a monitor centre dress circle and 2 either side, so they can still see the beat. And then we've got monitors backstage. And we've discovered if you have really more than 2 singers taking it from a monitor, somehow it just won't be together. You need a real live conductor.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so, from what you've been saying in our chat, you're at the very beginning of when things are starting, at least musically, and you're there kind of right to the very end, so you kind of oversee everything. That's a fascinating role. If you had advice for anyone interested in kind of getting into this role, would you be able to give us it?
Yeah, it's such a great job. Really, I can't stress that enough. Being a repetiteur, if you're a good pianist and you enjoy working with other musicians, just give it a go. Get to know operas, get to know orchestras and how orchestras work, and get to know the repertoire. I suppose an easy way in is playing for auditions.
Yeah.
That can be really hard, because often you'll have no rehearsal at all. And as you get more experienced, you learn the arias and people will bring generally the same arias, but there's probably 400 arias you really need to know.
Wow.
To begin with.
Yes.
You know, I would say, to any pianist, it's just such a wonderful industry to work in.
And it's so interesting doing these interviews and talking to people. So many of you have been here for a long time, which obviously speaks well of any company that's the case. Susannah, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be back soon with someone else from Scottish Opera. Cheers.